Hello friends! My name is Miss Beth and I'm the exhibitions coordinator at the Louisiana Art and Science Museum. I am also an artist, so today we are in my home studio and we will be making something together. What we'll be making is a painting or drawing inspired by a print by George Rodrigue in the LASM collection. We'll also be learning a whole lot about George Rodrigue and a little bit about his history and what he is most well known for. So we know that today the coronavirus pandemic has affected all of us in very many different ways. And right now we encourage you to create something with us and honor our local medical professionals at the same time. Today we'll be creating art inspired by this print, which is a work by George Rodrigue. Have you ever heard of him? He is most well known for his paintings of his blue dog. You can feel free to join me in painting, drawing, you can do a collage, you can use photography, anything that your heart desires, whatever makes you happy. And I'm going to be using this Crayola watercolor set that I borrowed from my son to create this watercolor of Teddy, who's a puppy dog of a friend of mine. And then I'm also going to show you guys a couple of techniques with some acrylics and doing a monochromatic painting of my studio cat, Sherlock. Now grab a brush and choose a pet or a friend or even an object that has brought you joy during this time at home. Then place a blue heart anywhere on it. It can be on its chest as I did with my paintings of my dog and my cat. It can be on the petals of a flower if you've been gardening and that's brought you joy. Anything along those lines would be perfect for this project. So let's learn a little bit about why we're putting the blue hearts onto our creations. The blue heart on your image all started with the hashtag HeartsFromHomeBR that was created by the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. This campaign of blue hearts was created to acknowledge the work of local medical professionals. Now the color blue was selected because it is the most popular color for scrubs, the uniform that doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals wear. These hardworking individuals in blue have been bringing comfort to their patients, and we would love to bring comfort to them and show our appreciation. So let's get started and get to painting. While we paint, I'm going to be sharing some fun facts about George Rodrigue with you guys, as well as a lot of techniques of watercolor painting as well as acrylic painting. So I've sketched out Teddy with a pencil, and now I'm just going in and adding some lighter washes in the darkest areas of the piece. That kind of lays the foundation of where the shadows need to go. Did you know that George Rodrigue was born in New Iberia, Louisiana in 1944? And at the age of 9, he was bedridden with polio, and he began to paint and draw to pass the long hours that he was in bed. In these early works, his parents and teachers saw promise and encouraged Rodrigue to continue creating. Now let's take a little look at our painting here. So you'll notice that I am using purple as well as blue and brown to kind of get these nice midtones and darker darks. One of the main techniques that you need to remember in watercolor media is to do lots of lighter washes. So these are just light layers that you use a good bit of water on just to kind of lay in your ground colors, and then you can go back in later and add in more details. And you'll notice that I'm not using black very often. It's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to want to use black, especially on eyes and snouts and such, but I really try to wait until the very end to add black to any of my pieces. You'll also notice that the red areas are much warmer and it almost brings the form forward a little bit, whereas the cooler shadows kind of sit backwards. It's kind of a trompe-l'oeil or a trick of the eye whenever you see that happening in color theory. Alright, so I've laid in my blue heart, and then I'm going to continue to block in my shadow shapes This really helps to define where the form is sitting on the page. And also try to let your brush strokes kind of mimic the direction that the fur is pointing. That also kind of gives a form follows function kind of feeling for the painting itself. Okay, let's learn a little bit more about Rodrigue. So he recovered from his bout with polio, and after high school, Rodrigue briefly attended the University of Southwest Louisiana in Lafayette. In 1963, he traveled to California to continue his arts education. While studying at the Arts Center College of Design in Los Angeles, he realized that his Cajun culture was alien to his fellow classmates. The history, ways of life, and stories of his childhood were completely foreign outside of his home state. Returning to Louisiana in 1967, Rodrigue set out to capture the distinctive elements of his homeland and the Cajun culture. He began with the Louisiana live oak, later introducing characters from the turn of the century, Cajuns, as they were before outside influence altered their way of life. Another really fun thing about watercolor is that you can use water to pick up pigment. So if you get a little too heavy-handed in any one area, you can use a wet brush to kind of pull away a little bit of the pigment. So I messed up a little bit of the snout there, and then I was able to kind of pull that pigment back up with just a little bit of water and the brush, and then that allowed me to go back in and kind of reform that shape. So if you mess up, it's okay. All right, so here's our finished painting of Sweet Teddy. All right, so let's get started on my painting of my cat Sherlock, who is often in the studio with me while I'm drawing. So you'll notice again that I'm laying in kind of the darkest darks and then working from the back to the foreground. That's really common for a lot of painters in general. It kind of helps set the figure in space in a sense. So, as I was saying, Rodrigue is best known for his blue dog paintings. The canine icon was first conceived in 1984 as an illustration in a book of Cajun ghost stories. The dog, tinted blue-gray from the moonlight, was based on Rodrigue's old studio dog, Tiffany. She was intended to represent the loup-garou, a Cajun werewolf dog. However, her eerie eye color and yellow stare did not frighten viewers, but it enchanted them. They dubbed her the Blue Dog, which Rodrigue enjoyed, and he launched her into pop icon fame. Rodrigue made innumerable works with his blue dog. Created a few days after Hurricane Katrina, this print titled "We Will Rise Again" was the first of 4 used to raise funds for the Blue Dog Relief George Rodrigue Art Campaign for Recovery. Sales of this print, featuring a watery American flag, benefited the Southeast Louisiana chapter of the Red Cross. Rodrigue wrote in September 2005, "The blue dog is partly submerged, and its eyes, normally yellow, are red with a broken heart. Like a ship's SOS, the Red Cross on the dog's chest calls out for help." His artist campaign ultimately raised $1.5 million for the ravaged city. We were inspired by the Red Cross on Tiffany's chest in this piece, so we decided to do the blue heart on all of our pieces so that we could honor the medical professionals who are fighting this pandemic. So you'll see here that I'm using what's called a limited palette. So whenever you're only using a few colors, as opposed to using an entire spectrum of colors, we call that a limited palette. And Rodrigue did this a lot with his Blue Dog series to kind of create that eerie mood. So what I decided to do was block in the big colors, so darks and mediums, and then go back in and add whites. And then I added details to the fur with a little bit of a more detailed brush on a second pass through the piece. Because acrylic dries relatively quickly, you can lay in a darker layer and then come back on top with the lighter fur, creating kind of that illusion of darker fur under the lighter fur on top. So that is very easily done with acrylic because it does dry so quickly, and you can have a lot of fun with your brush strokes whenever you do start to lay in the fur shape. Always try to let your brush strokes mimic whatever form you're trying to follow. So if the fur on his shoulder goes out and then down, try to turn your brush to the side a little bit and go out and then down. You'll be amazed how much just turning your brush a little bit will help dictate a form. Another really fun thing about acrylic paint is that as it dries, you can kind of use the half-dry paint on the paper to mix with a little bit of wet paint so that you kind of get this fluffy feeling, which is really fun whenever you're painting animals. A really fun way to get whiskers to look good is if you use a very long-haired brush with a little bit of water and some white paint, and then you just kind of drag it along and you get some really fun whiskers. So if you have a long brush, I highly recommend you grab it and put those whiskers on there. Okay, so now I just added a little bit of a shadow and we have Sherlock.
Thank you so much for joining me today in my studio while we painted our friends. I hope that creating brings you peace. It always helps me feel better after a long day. So please feel free to share with us your drawings or paintings, collage work, photography, whatever you feel inspired by with your blue hearts at LASMBR. You can use the hashtag HeartsFromHomeBR, hashtag MakeSomethingMonday, and hashtag ShowMeSunday. And we'll be sure to feature you on our Instagram stories. We're hoping to see you back at the museum very soon, and we miss you, and we hope that you continue to create and learn even at home. Bye!